engineering everyday equity. So, engineering a kind of justice. Got it.
Welcome to Engineering Everyday Equity. My name is Anthony D. Mays, and I'm a software engineer on the data visualization team here at Google.
Hi, Anthony. I'm Scribe.
Today we have Leah Caligado. So nice to have you here today, Leah.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony.
Leah? Well, I've always liked that name. Golly, how courteous and polite everything is.
What's outside of Pleasantville?
In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to build inclusive practices into your product development process. And we're going to talk over the next few episodes specifically about the design process and the design sprint and how you can think about inclusion at that stage. And today we're specifically going to talk about the planning phase and about how to think about equity, diversity, and inclusion from day one.
Aha! So, how to integrate identity politics into the very core of your design. How to use social ideology to inform engineering decisions. Got it.
If you can just take a moment to tell me a little bit about your background.
So I actually just came back from giving a speech to Google Women Engineers Summit on intersectional feminism.
Intersectional feminism. Got it.
I'm a software engineer on Google's local search team, and I'm also the founder of a diversity blog called Women of Silicon Valley. I do a lot of diversity inclusion work because I'm the daughter of Vietnamese and Filipino refugees. And actually, for a long time, I didn't want that to identify me because I felt like I was punished for it.
She felt like she was punished for it. Why did she feel this way? Well, we never do find out. But I am curious why she said, felt like she was, rather than simply saying that she was.
But now I see my diversity as essential to bringing my cultural identity to work and making sure that the people who are like me and look like me are being included into product decisions.
Making sure that people who are like you and who look like you are included. So it is not even an unconscious bias towards certain people based on where they come from or what they look like. Your biases are an open part of your personal process. Got it.
And so I'd love to learn more about your background and what motivates you to do this work.
Sure, and thanks for sharing that with me.
I do love manners.
You know, as a black man and as a Christian, I could really identify with some of the things that you were talking about, diversity and inclusion every day, both in terms of the products that I help to build and in the interactions that I have within the tech space.
Aha! Interactions in the tech space. So, are we going to be given some active examples?
You know, sometimes it can be difficult as a black man when I, for instance, need to proactively think about how visible my badge is to ensure that I'm not more aggressively badge checked than other people are for being on campus.
More aggressively badge checked than other people are on campus. So, Google's security personnel are racist. Got it.
And then there are times when I need to worry about or think about maybe disparaging jokes that someone might make about my faith as a Christian or about religion in general.
Jokes. You acknowledge that what you're worrying about, what you have to think about, are jokes. Jokes about your faith. Well, I wonder what happens if he does hear a joke about Jesus or Christianity. I wonder what the punishment is for blasphemy.
And so as I think about those things, it drives me to want to think about these topics and how to make sure that tech is more diverse and inclusive in terms of, again, how we build our products and how we work with each other as colleagues.
Well, I think before we talk more about equity, diversity, inclusion, we should probably try setting up and defining our parameters.
Okay, now this I really do appreciate. I mean, how many times have we had speakers toss buzzwords out into the ether without ever telling us exactly what they mean? So, I approve.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So first, let's talk about equity. Equity denotes fairness. and make sure everyone has access to the same opportunities.
All right, so that definition generally aligns with what the word means. But for the sake of this discussion, equity, as described by our speaker, means equal opportunity. Got it.
In that fairness, equity recognizes that because advantages and obstacles exist, everyone doesn't start from the same place.
Wait a second. You were on the right track just before. Equality of opportunity. Now you're talking about individual capabilities?
Pursuing equity begins by acknowledging that unequal playing field and continues to course correct and address the imbalance.
Course correct and address the imbalance. So, equity isn't so much about equality of opportunity, but rather reaching an equality of outcome. Got it.
The next is diversity. Diversity, by definition, is about variety, the presence of difference within a given setting.
Yes, that is indeed a brief and accurate description of what diversity actually means. But why do I think we're about to be provided some enhancements to that definition?
Studies show that a team that hails from a diversity of backgrounds, beliefs, and experiences can approach the same issue from many different angles.
Beliefs. When did one's personal beliefs become a metric by which to hire or build your teams? Is there some kind of religious or ideological testing at Google?
So by building diversity into your organization and dog food process, it will help guarantee a wider base is considered for your product.
Dog food process. Okay, I have no idea what that means. I can only assume that it is some kind of business or development lingo.
And the last is inclusion. Inclusion isn't just about the presence of diversity. It goes farther to ensure everyone feels valued and welcomed.
So, a process to ensure an equality of emotion among all of the diverse people who all have different backgrounds and who all have different beliefs. You know, I feel sorry for whomever at Google is in charge of keeping all of the people happy all of the time.
As Verna Myers, a thought leader in the inclusion strategy space, puts it, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance.
So, by that metaphor, inclusion is up to other people. I cannot be proactive and ask someone to dance myself? Or, better yet, bring a date of my own? I mean, there's so many directions that metaphor could take, but anyway, let's review. Equity means having malleable performance expectations in order to make sure that no one ends up any worse off than anyone else, regardless of their skills or experience. Diversity means methodically hiring people and building teams on the basis of personal attributes and beliefs that are not necessarily pertinent to the workplace and which might even skirt equal employment laws. And inclusion is the mandate that all employees feel good both about themselves and their place in the larger scheme of the company. So, social engineering geared towards not offending anyone. Got it.
So would you say that means equity is about switching who takes the lead?
Well, I'd say it's more about ensuring that everyone feels empowered to do the asking.
No. You said it was about course correcting the playing field in order to allow people to rise to the same level as others, even if they don't possess equal merit. You know, if you're going to be retrofitting your own definitions on the fly, why did you bother defining terms in the first place?
So now that we've laid the groundwork for these fundamental concepts, let's talk about the design process. And as I think about the design process, there's a story that comes to mind about this app that was in the process of being developed. And it involved allowing people to silence their phones by tapping on it while it's in their pocket. Now, as a guy, I don't see any problem with this, but as a woman, you see any issues?
Wait a second. Are you implicitly mansplaining to this woman? How dare you?
Yeah, very few of my pants have pockets sewn in.
All it took was one woman in the room to identify an issue that could have potentially impacted 50% of their potential user base.
Okay, maybe this is a dumb question, but how does the phone know that it's in your pocket rather than in your hand? Even if you don't have pockets, you can't silence your phone by tapping it out of pocket, so to speak. But regardless, this feature was obviously sexist, because all women lack pockets and there is no other method available to women by which to silence their phone. Got it.
And so, as you think about the design process, are there things that you've encountered in your past experience?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the effects, positive and negative, of design thinking. For example, when I was a student at Stanford.
Did you say Stanford?
I took this awesome senior project class where all the teams were commissioned to build apps.
Okay.
And so because most of the engineers, if not all, were Stanford students, a lot of the apps we produced were social media or marketplace apps, which assumed things like leisure, time for leisure, or disposable income.
Right.
So these apps fizzled while the teams that tried to represent the community outside of Stanford and do field studies actually addressed real community needs.
Well, to me, it sounds like they were attempting to replicate what Mark Zuckerberg did by creating a campus-based social media framework. And we all know how that fizzled. I won't deny that at any particular point in time, the market was saturated with such things, but you strike while the iron is hot in business. And are we going to be told that the community-based apps were wildly successful in comparison? Well, I've watched this whole video, and, nope.
Another example I can think of in the real world is when I joined Google full-time, a startup popped up in San Francisco that claimed to replace the mom and pop corner shops that we often see on street corners. Clearly little design thinking was infused into this app, because otherwise they would have known that San Francisco has a really long, controversial relationship with gentrification. And by claiming to gentrify these mom and pop stores that were often run and founded by people of color, this app crashed and burned because it got a lot of outroar.
Ow. Yeah, I can totally imagine that happening.
Yeah, I can imagine it happening too. Taking an admittedly tone-deaf marketing claim and transmogrifying it into being a racist agenda? In San Francisco, of all places? I am not surprised in the least. But that aside, Google itself obviously has no experience at all in creating gentrification, either in San Francisco or anywhere else in the world, of course.
Of course! All right, so we've talked about a few examples. Obviously, we don't want to repeat those same mistakes. So how about we talk about building inclusiveness into our own hypothetical app and getting that started?
Okay, a hypothetical app and how we're going to infuse it with inclusiveness. And inclusiveness, remember, is the process by which you make everyone feel valued and welcome. Proceed.
How can I start thinking about inclusion from the very beginning of designing this app that I want to build?
Well, one thing we want to do, Anthony, is create a challenge statement to build the inclusivity into our app. What do we have currently for our statement?
Okay, so in 2018, I want to build an app that connects college students with colleges and demystifies the application process.
Okay, an app that connects college students to colleges and makes the application process easier. And we want to put inclusivity into the app from the start, wherein inclusivity is about making people feel good, welcomed, and valued. Noted.
That's a really good start. How about let's take it further and say something like, in 2018, we want to launch an app that matches colleges and demystifies the college search process for first-generation students.
Sure.
For first-generation students. So that is your amendment to the initial goal of the app. We've moved from just college students into something far more specific and focusing on first-generation college students. So the first step in inclusivity is to exclude large swaths of people from the focus of your product and its marketing. Got it.
Cool. All right. So now that I think we have a good working challenge statement, how can I ensure that the team stays focused on executing?
Well, there are a couple of things. Let's make sure that stakeholders and execs are all on board to build inclusivity into our project.
Okay, sorry, I'm still confused. How does excluding anyone who is not a first-generation college student from your app's focus make other people feel valued and welcome? You know, the definition you gave for what inclusive means.
Inclusion isn't just about the presence of diversity. It goes farther to ensure everyone feels valued and welcomed.
Have them reiterate to the team that it's a value that they share. The challenge statement is actually not enough, so we're going to need team members to reinforce each other, reiterate each other, and keep each other accountable.
The team members need to keep each other accountable with the values of the challenge statement so that everyone is on board. So, if someone is not on board with the values presented in the challenge statement, how do you make that person accountable for their wrongthink?
One thing to note, make sure we're not putting the burden of representing a certain marginalized group on someone on your team who represents that marginalized background.
I'm not sure how you would burden someone with representing a marginalized group, but hey, I have a simple solution. Why not make the app focused on people rather than on first-generation people? Because then everyone is included. Everyone! Regardless of their personal background.
So, for example, as a woman of color who's often been the only woman of color in many teams I've worked on in tech, I was usually the go-to for all questions pertaining to either women or to Asian people. So while I'm happy to help, it can be difficult bearing the brunt of representing all women or all Asian people.
Oh, right. When it comes to trying to craft products and ideas around certain demographics, asking for advice from people from those demographics is wrong. A woman or woman of color should be given no more or less attention on a team when a matter dealing with women or women of color arises. But, I thought the whole point of diversity programs was to have people from diverse backgrounds and diverse perspectives to come at things from diverse directions.
Studies show that a team that hails from a diversity of backgrounds, beliefs, and experiences can approach the same issue from many different angles.
And weren't we already lectured to on the importance of listening to women about women's issues?
And it involved allowing people to silence their phones by tapping on it while it's in their pocket. Now, as a guy, I don't see any problem with this, but as a woman, you see any issues?
Yeah, I gotta say, I am getting some very mixed signals here.
How do you personally advocate for people who are perhaps different than you are?
Everyone should just care about diversity and inclusion at face value, but unfortunately that's not always the case.
Ah, yes. Listen and believe. Got it.
So as a woman of color, what's helped me is when an ally steps up to the plate and explains the benefits of including my demographic when it was too emotionally burdensome or draining for me to explain why my demographic should be included when it wasn't at face value.
So, when allies assume to know the extent of your ability to express yourself independently and swoop in to defend and bolster you because you cannot stand up for yourself, that is a good thing. Got it.
Okay, so there's allyship. Is there some other things that I can do for the team to make sure that we're continuing to think on this?
One thing is lightning talks, and we want to make sure that everyone who's present at this sprint is diverse. And so how are some ways that we can ensure the building of your app and that the people in the room building it reflect our user base?
Your user base. Well, given the qualification that you added of first-generation college students, I guess you would have to screen your team members to make sure that there were several first-generation college students included in the process. Because, obviously, anyone who is not a first-generation college student would be entirely counterproductive to the project. I mean, am I close?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing that comes off the top of my head is the fact that, the challenge statement, right, I want to build this app for first-generation college students, so it probably would help if I had one or two first-generation college students talking about their experience and about how they were able to connect with schools and scholarships. So, sound good to you?
Precisely, that's a great idea.
No. Wait a second. It is not a great idea. It is the only idea that she allowed you to have. Okay, folks, what we have just witnessed is a microcosm of how social justice insinuates itself into places where it is unneeded in order to ruin things and control people. Right in front of us, she took an idea that was initially aimed at everyone, without conditions, and inserted one small tweak to bring identity politics into what was otherwise a product idea open to all. And the creator's concession to that addition immediately surrendered any creative control he had over his own idea. By adding that specificity of a target demographic to the challenge statement, and then putting forth the question as to who should populate the team in order to best reflect the user base, which has now been determined by the outside party, the creator was left with no choice but to select first-generation college students onto the team. But since she complimented his idea as good rather than required, I suppose he might feel more welcomed and valued. These are the mechanisms and the clever efficiency of social justice.
So let's just summarize real quickly. We talked about the meaning of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
And quickly contradicted yourself in each instance.
We also talked about what it means to have a great challenge statement.
Adding elements of identity politics to challenge statements makes them great. Got it.
Listen, we talked about executive buy-in and the importance of support from leadership. We talked about allyship, which is really important.
So long as those allies know their place and only pick up the ball for those whose physical or personal attributes commend them to needing special care and protection.
And lastly, we talked about how to hold inclusive lightning talks and about having people from diverse backgrounds who can shed their perspectives and experience.
Diverse backgrounds, so long as some of those backgrounds are determined as necessary and valuable, regardless of personal merit, while requiring others to be excluded on the basis of their backgrounds, regardless of their personal merit. Got it.
Thank you for watching. If you'd like to continue the work of building equity, diversity, and inclusion into your company or product, check out the link in the description below.
Well, thank you for the offer, but I don't really need it. You see, my product is about as equitable and diverse as you can get. I don't really advertise my channel that much. I don't make my videos in a style with an intention to please anyone other than myself, really, and anyone in the world can watch them without any baked-in restrictions or derisions on my part. Unlike Google, apparently, a company that values feelings over effectiveness and cornering people into agreeing with their ideological mandates. A company where what you are takes precedence over who you are, and how you feel is more vital than the skills you possess. Equity, diversity, and inclusion. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit of modern corporate America. And woe be to the employee who ever dares to take their names in vain. As always, thank you for watching.